Well, welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Being kind is the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And this is the stream where we're going to see who's on their bullshit this week. Just one other thing I just need to do. I found out something very cool. Just today. Apparently I'd done something kind of amazing that I had absolutely no idea I'd done. I put out like a fundraising appeal for the Nessa Arnold translation project, and just for like my survival, because I'm continuing to have a really, really shitty time. AI has like really wrecked the translation profession, at least temporarily, until people start getting sued because they realize that AI can't translate any better than it can draw hands or like do math or any of the other things that it's being sold as capable of doing, but absolutely not being capable of. So I put this out on Blue Sky, and somebody I wasn't familiar with, who was apparently following me, maybe I know them under another name on a different channel, quote tweeted it. It's a Blue Sky tweet. That's a thing now. Blue Sky is also tweeting. And they added, "Hey, this is one of the people who helped an abused trans man escape Caleb Maupin's cults. Do you mind helping them out?" And it's like, wait a second. Is this a thing? I'm like, okay, could I have done that and not realized it? And so I decided I just wrote back. I was like, did I do that? I've certainly done a lot of exposing Maupin, but if I helped someone do that without knowing it, that's a pretty cool thing to hear. And it turns out, apparently, according to this person, this was one of two streams that actually handled this particular person well. I don't even know who it is. I mean, if you're watching this, however, I'd love to talk to you. I mean, I did not know anything about this until just now, and it's actually kind of cool to hear. And really, on a certain level, I would say that this is probably also like something. Yeah, I know. That's where I am. It's like I helped somebody apparently get out of a cult, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. And let me just say, I think that the chat here really deserves some of the credit, because it is really, despite very rare instances of dickheads, overwhelmingly a really cozy vibe. It is, and that is very much down to the people who are in chat. So, I mean, I think that that's probably as much down to you as it is to me. But so apparently that's a thing that I did. I'd love to know more about it. So, if you're the person I helped, if you're watching this in the VOD or whatever, and you're the person I helped apparently escape the cults, the Muppet cults, I would love to hear from you. also, I want to hear, like, inside. I'm interested in more takes on, like, the inside of these cults. I'm interested because, like, he's got this whole, you know, CPI Mark II going on, and, you know, he's claimed it's all different. That not that anything needed to change, because he didn't do anything wrong, but it's all different, and so whatever he didn't do wrong, it's not going to happen again and stuff. And so I'd be interested in hearing what somebody has to say about the degree to which that is in fact not bullshit. Okay, so like the past couple of streams, we've been looking at Francesca Fiorentini debating Jenk on his sucking up to Fash. And I've got some other stuff, other people talking about, you know, that, and I'm kind of interested in continuing that, maybe looking at these other things. But there was also a video that showed up in my Rex, a short one, and called USA, from a channel called USA Mom in Germany, called How to Spot US Propaganda, a guide for teaching media literacy from German classrooms. I've never heard of this channel, but I'm curious of the premise, and so I was thinking we might start out with that one. Because media literacy is something that I also try to spend time on, because, I mean, when you get down to it, we're not really taught to recognize propaganda really effectively. So here we go. I may need to turn the volume up a wee bit.
Video explaining how German students study U.S. propaganda in their English courses in high school. The video went viral, gaining over 30 million views across platforms. The textbook I mentioned in that video is now selling for thousands of dollars on resale markets in the U.S. because it's nearly impossible to get internationally.
Okay, this is already quite interesting. Wait. So, this is not the... this is a video following up on... Does she have a link to the original video? Yes, but it's very, very short, apparently. Okay, we're gonna just look at this one. It's like 50 seconds. She clearly doesn't get into much there, so it looks like this might be the one where she gets into it. So I'm very curious. I know, as I said, I know nothing about her. I have no idea where she's coming from, but the idea actually is interesting to me.
But you don't need the book to learn and use the same strategies it teaches. Today, I'll break down some techniques from that textbook, as well as approaches taught in German classrooms and media literacy programs for analyzing communication and propaganda. You can use some of these things.
Okay, and it will be interesting to see, like, I mean, I don't know if other people in other U.S. schools around the same time had similar things. I would imagine so, since we actually had standardized tests on it in Ohio. But we did have this whole thing on recognizing propaganda, and it was fucking useless. Because the only propaganda that they would have you recognize was either propaganda from official enemies or just advertising. Like, not the sort of propaganda that we are just, like, flooded with from all sides.
In your everyday conversations with others, whether you're a parent or a teacher or just someone who's navigating discussions with people who maybe aren't thinking critically about media. With over 15 years of experience as a college-level educator studying communications, I believe that these strategies are some of the best.
A new cat? Aw. Yeah, you just have, like, animals just following you home, I get the impression.
Tools for critically analyzing media and ultimately propaganda. The goal is to make critical thinking a natural part of your thought process.
Okay, let's see if we can get past the intro. The why have it. Okay. I mean, this isn't long, but it seems...
Is modeling curiosity. When you see an ad or piece of media, pause and ask out loud, I wonder why they said it that way. Let's check this out.
Okay, starting out with a good one, I like that. Because so much shit is meant to have us immediately, like, short-circuit any kind of thinking on what we just saw. And instead, like, immediately just have some sort of a visceral reaction. Like, you think about, you know, the propaganda around October 7th, which I think it's safe to say has now definitively fallen apart because the Israeli prosecutor, like, okay, back October 2023, like, a spokesperson for the Israeli police said that they were going to be, I think, tens of thousands of charges of sexual assault against Palestinian resistance fighters and stuff like this. And so the Israeli prosecutor's office has now said there will not be any charges because they haven't got any evidence of it happening. They've gone through all the footage that they took off of resistance fighters who they, you know, captured or killed, and they can't find anything that substantiates literally any of it. But the idea was that we were supposed to just react, you know, just react viscerally to, like, all sorts of horrible shit that they were telling us, rather than stopping and saying, okay, is this true? Are we being given any evidence of it? Why would somebody decide to come up with all these wild claims that make an entire ethnic group out to be monsters at the same time as, oh, they're trying to kill them all also? I mean, that is a discipline that I think really, even amongst, like, comrades, even amongst people who are, like, otherwise fairly critical, there will often be a failure, I think, to really just stop, take a breath, and say, okay, what actually is this thing I just saw? Is this actually a thing? Who's telling me this? Why are they telling me this? Why would it suit them for me to think or know this? And stuff like that. You know, just really, really basic stuff. There's so many just short-circuit reactions to these things. So that's I've never heard it called modeling curiosity, but I'll go with it. That's cool. Okay, like it. Very good.
People are saying the same thing. This normalizes questioning media rather than passively consuming it. People young and old learn by example, so your curiosity becomes their curiosity. The second is turning why into a habit. Whenever you're shown a video or someone talks about a piece of media, ask, why do you think they made that? Why did they say it that way? By making why your go-to question, you can engage in a discussion about it.
I mean, okay, this is good. You definitely need why. I feel like this kind of follows on a bit from the modeling curiosity. She was saying why a lot there, but there are other questions too. Like, actually, all the W's are good. Like, who? Who's actually saying this thing happened? You know, who are they talking to about this? Who are they interviewing about this? You know, when did this come out? What else has this person said? You know, all the W's really need to be asked. The fetal mom of the kitten you found, the one that's healthy now. Oh, well, good. You reunited them. I'm sure they're happy.
These questions guide others to think critically without it feeling like a chore. The third is to use real-life examples. Opportunities to guide and engage in these discussions are everywhere. During a shopping trip, ask...
Oh, I mean, actually, I'm realizing the more she goes on that she's talking about how to teach these skills as well. And I think that's actually interesting, too, because I mean, on a certain level, that's something that we can all also be doing. I was thinking just recently, I think about this every once in a while, because people, you know, like, other, like, leftist content creators will say things, or that, and, you know, or more generally, like, in conversations that I have, you know, there's a tendency, you obviously don't want to overestimate, your own influence, our own influence on like the sort of general discourse or anything like that. You want to be realistic about it, but that also means we shouldn't underestimate it. I mean, the most recent case of this that I was seeing is, I put up a post on Facebook and I was saying, you know, we should think twice before sharing memes that actually just assume Luigi Mangione did the thing that everybody's kind of happy about, because there's going to be a jury picked, and that jury can either be picked in an environment where it's a foregone conclusion that he did it, or in an environment where people are where it's seen as at least debatable. And the thing is, every bit of evidence that's been made public against him is, like, to call it circumstantial is charitable. You know, to call it circumstantial is charitable. A lot of it is almost doesn't even rise to that level. So, and I've heard his lawyer say that she has not seen anything from the prosecution that actually ties him to the scene. So, and so I wrote that because, I mean, I think about that because there are all these memes that just assume it. I mean, and I don't share those ones. I'll share Free Luigi because I mean, if he didn't do it, obviously he needs to go home. If he did do it, I mean, honestly, it's clear that he committed no crime in the eyes of the working class. Like, nobody feels particularly broken up about a mass murderer who made a huge amount of money doing it having been sent on to his reward. But, you know, somebody said, well, you know, we have no influence over that. And it's like, well, you know, on a certain level we don't. We don't want to overstate our influence. But we're all participating in a discourse that is actually, to a great extent, lacking in geographical limits. People are hearing what you and I and other people are saying who are far away from the jurisdiction where this is going to happen, who are in that jurisdiction. You know, we have more influence than I think we realize, at the same time as we have less influence than we'd hope, and less influence than people hostile to us will often, like, accuse us of having. You know, when people like Xanderhole act like it was revolutionary communists who convinced the entire working class to, you know, stay home on election day or something like that. Like, any of them even know who we are. But on the other hand, we probably have more influence than we realize. That isn't necessarily a whole lot, but it's there. Which is why, I mean, what I personally try to do, my own personal sort of rule to live by, is I try to make sure, especially when I'm on stream, but also just on social media generally, that the words that come out of my mouth, or the words that I type, are words that I would actually be happy having people act on. Happy having people at least take as a starting point for their further discussions and stuff like that. Oh, this, Hail Satine, hey, this isn't a chud. I mean, maybe she's also a chud, but so far she doesn't really have the smell of a chud. This is a channel that showed up in my recommendations I thought looked really interesting, called USA Mom in Germany. I'll drop the link in chat. And what she's talking about is how, like, German school curriculums teach people to recognize U.S. propaganda. And so I was just kind of curious, what were we going to get? Was this going to be some chud shit? Was this going to be good advice? And so far it's been good advice. So far I would say it's been good advice. So we're going to continue here.
Why do you think they're using bright colors on this cereal box? Discuss advertisements on TV or YouTube and how they're designed to attract your attention.
Yeah, see, and but it's like advertisements are the most obvious case of propaganda. And, I mean, I think one of the things that is really unfortunate about most discussion of propaganda in this country that I see, it's either, you know, again, it's either like official enemies or it's advertising. And those are the two most obvious cases. Those are, I mean, of course, if you're talking to little kids, and I guess this is, I mean, she calls herself USA Mom in Germany, so maybe she's talking about how to model this stuff to your kids, which, cool. But, I mean, apply it more generally. Why is this the music they're using the background in the news, for example? Why are they tinting, you know, the footage of, I don't know, Beirut that particular color? Isn't that interesting? There's so many other things other than advertising, although I suppose if she's talking about this for, like, from a parenting perspective and talking about this stuff to, like, your kids or something like that, I guess this would be a good starter, like, for younger kids or something like that.
Make it fun by making fun of things. For example, that seems silly to put a giant tiger on a cereal box. It definitely got my attention. And we can circle back.
Yeah, I mean, make it fun by making fun. I mean, that's kind of a little bit of what I do here when I think about it. Isn't it? That's kind of funny the way he always dresses like a fucking junior high school principal who doesn't know what size he wears. Shit.
Back then to the why question. Likewise, when you go to reach for a package at the grocery store, I want you to think about why you're reaching for that item. Does it say natural?
Because it's too fucking high up.
Just on the shelf at eye level, or is it just packaged prettier than others? Also, encourage healthy skepticism.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely sounds a lot like this is specifically for talking to your kids, but I think in terms of, I was hoping when she said U.S. propaganda that we were going to be talking more about, like, specifically U.S. propaganda. I mean, this is just about advertising. But in terms of sort of, like, media literacy, media criticism habits, all the stuff that she's suggested has, at the very least, been a decent starting point.
Use phrases like, that sounds interesting, but can we look it up? I'm not sure if that's true, but let's check. We can make...
I mean, yeah. And actually, in terms of, like, encouraging those habits in other people, like kids or otherwise, I mean, it's not bad to just have that be a habitual thing to say. Like, well, why don't we just check that out? I wonder if anyone else is saying the same thing. You know, like, when some bullshit like October 7th comes out, or when Israel says, oh, yeah, it was actually aliens that bombed that hospital, it wasn't us.
Make it fun by doing quick fact checks together, using reliable sources. So for
okay. Yeah, I mean, for some things, that's probably a relatively easy thing to do. Find reliable sources. I mean, it really depends. I mean, and of course, this is talking, and the more I watch this, the more obviously this is meant for parents trying to encourage this stuff in their kids. But the whole concept of reliable sources is a fraught one. That, I mean, just judging what sources are reliable and in what context they are and aren't reliable is a whole fucking thing. Like, I started working on a video essay on the subject of source criticism and media literacy and stuff like that, and the reason it's not done yet is because it's long, and it's long precisely because the concept of, like, reliable sources, what counts as one, how to judge it, that shit, that's actually the hard part. A lot of the time, you're like encouraged, actually by propaganda, to think it's easy. Oh, well, you know, the news said that, NPR said that, or whatever, and therefore it must be relatively reliable or something like that. It's like, no, it's there are fucking layers to it. It is an onion, except you can't make a bhaji out of it, unfortunately. That would be so much better if you could.
For example, a friend shares a headline on social media that says, scientists prove chocolate makes you live longer. You can react together. That's...
Well, let me put it this way. If you're holding on to chocolate, giving me the chocolate will promote longevity compared to withholding it.
Sounds amazing, but do you think that's really true? Then you can look up the study and see if it's from a credible source.
Well, yeah, but that's, again, credible source does a lot of work. Yeah, you look up the study, but but the question isn't just, is it a credible source? If you've got the study already in front of you, then the first question is, does the study actually say the thing the headline says it says? And with science journalism, the answer is it often doesn't, actually.
Use that opportunity to reflect. Some headlines sound exciting to get clicks, but the story might be more complicated. It's always good to dig deeper and find out more before believing. Healthy skepticism empowers people to look beyond the surface of flashy headlines and viral posts. Also, make sure to highlight positive media.
Okay, I'm not sure where she's going with this one.
Share examples of media that are thoughtful, fair, and educational. And discuss how to...
Okay, positive in the sense of, like, good. Media that do it well. Sources that do it well. Okay, yeah. Although, I would say, really, what you should highlight more than anything, if we're talking about, like, promoting these habits in ourselves and others, it's highlighting good examples of how to do that analysis. That's what I'd be highlighting.
And appreciate these well-made, balanced content. Pause and point out good practices. See how they explain where they got their information? They're showing data and visuals to help explain the topic clearly. Ask questions too. What's one thing you learned that you didn't know before? And reflect. It's great to see media that's focused on teaching and sharing knowledge. Sharing examples of trustworthy media helps others recognize and appreciate content that...
And what I would say here, I mean, I agree. Yeah, but you can't just say there isn't, like, generally trustworthy. Like, trustworthy on everything. If you're gonna, like, share examples of trustworthy media, I mean, there are two things that I would say always ought to go with that. One, what are you saying it's trustworthy on? And two, this is even more important, why?
Adds real value.
And it's not, and even if you're not, like, sharing it or whatever, it's a good thing to think about. Okay, I'm finding this account reliable. It's trustworthy to me. And you ask, okay, why do I think that? Why am I inclined to believe that this is legit? And, you know, make sure you have, like, a clear, you know, and have clarity on exactly what you're, you know, on what the thought process is, to see if maybe there's some kind of bullshit that jumped in there unconsciously.
The next is to encourage what-if scenarios. Ask people if they can imagine different outcomes or perspectives. What if this story were told from someone else's point of view? What?
Actually, that's a good one. I wasn't quite sure when I saw what-if scenarios where that was going, but yeah. Like, it really, and it actually, in many cases, it follows into the question. Sorry about the freeze frame, USA mom in Germany. Wasn't trying to do you dirty that way. It's not a great, it won't last long. But it's like, especially when you're dealing with the sort of propaganda that shows up in the news, it's like, what would the people this is about say about it if they were actually given a chance to say their whole bit? Were they, first of all? But if, like, the whole thing was being written with their version as the starting point, do you think it's going to be the same thing? And, I mean, and actually, so much of like, source criticism and source analysis is actually introspection. Because you are not just criticizing and critically analyzing the source, you're critically analyzing what goes on in your head to make you think, oh, this sounds like bullshit, oh, this sounds legit, and everything like that. It's an introspective thing. I mean, like, it's interesting. There's now, like, a whole literature publicly available because it's taught in some universities on, like, intelligence analysis. It's a post 9/11 thing. They got all these endowed chairs of intelligence analysis. And the result is there are actually some very good textbooks on the subject that I've read. And they also, really everything that they say works just fine for, like, media analysis, because because intelligence analysis is just analyzing sources and trying to put together what they're, you know, first of all, do they make sense? You know, does this person sound, you know, legit? and how does this fit in with other stuff that we know from other people and stuff like that. And the point that they make is that the more that you are actually also constantly having to be on guard and aware of where your own internal biases and tendencies might be influencing it, and to be very introspective about, okay, this is why I think that, and stuff like that, when there's a matter of interpretation there and stuff like that. If anyone is interested in some reading recommendations, I don't have them handy, but I can link to them in the Discord after.
The opposite were true. And how would that change the message? This helps people think about bias and alternative interpretations, as well as intersectionality. This one is my personal favorite.
Interesting.
It's a game called Follow the Money.
Okay, and let me just say, great website for this. It's called SourceWatch, run by the Center for Media and Democracy. And, I mean, when it comes to, think tanks and foundations and things like that, and, to some extent media sources and things too, but mostly foundations, it's a great resource for figuring out who's paying for what. If you want to know what the money behind PragerU is or something like that, you can find it out. If you want to find out where else that money is showing up, it will tell you. It is extremely detailed. They do excellent work. I highly it is one of my absolute favorites.
Entering an ad or a persuasive message or even a media article, ask who paid
Especially
for
a
this,
media
and
article.
Why do they want us to believe it?
Yeah.
What might
Who
they
owns
gain
this?
If we do something they suggest. This works to build awareness of the financial motives behind media, and it's
Because we live in
relatively easy to
capitalism.
do. Look up who is funding a study, and then look up who's funding that person, and follow it as far back as you can go.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good practice, and save those things. Save that stuff. I have mind maps that I've done on all sorts of, where it's just I'm, finding organizational and financial and institutional connections between people and organizations that are somehow of interest, right-wing media sources and shit like that, but also, Fash and stuff, just generally. And that stuff can be very useful over and over again if you're really following it and, making all the connections and stuff like that, because these things keep showing up over and over again.
Until you can get to the original source of the money and what their motives might be. You can also make predictions. Pause videos, movies, or ads and ask, why do you think they're showing this right now? Afterward, discuss whether the prediction was correct.
I mean, she comes back to why a lot, and I think that's an important one. Let's see. What is the evidence? Emotional triggers.
This allows people to assess where they think the message is going, what predictable patterns are happening in the messaging, and what might happen based on their own assumptions of where the storyline is going.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and not just with, with narration or something. With visuals, too. Because there's a whole visual language that's going on, and a lot of the time it goes uncommented. I mean, if you are involved at all in creating and working in visual languages, like video editing and stuff like that, you get more used to actually seeing, oh, this is what's going on there. And those patterns do keep on over and over and over again, so it is, I mean, definitely something to observe. I mean, this is good advice. Yeah, I mean, everything on here is good advice. I mean, and it's specifically for, talking to your kids about this, but I think, the overall thinking is not bad at all.
Likewise, you can spot patterns together. Encourage people to notice recurring themes. Have you seen other ads that use the same kind of music?
Have you noticed other times when somebody blows somebody up and the New York Times puts it in the passive voice?
Words? Why do you think this keeps showing up in different places? This helps us recognize broader trends in messaging. And one of the things that we know about propaganda is it's repeated often. So if you're seeing the same thing over
Also,
and over,
a lot of it is very lazy, and so it just uses the same schemes over and over again, even with different content.
over again, this is a good time to stop and reflect. Another important question to ask is, what's the evidence? When somebody shares...
Yeah, okay, that's a good one. What else has she got here? Emotional triggers, Social media influencers encourage questions, admit uncertainty. All, yeah, I mean, absolute, all good stuff. I think we're already at midnight, so I'm just gonna drop the link in here to the rest of the video for anyone who wants to see the whole thing. But I mean, I would say overall, not bad at all. Good stuff, USA Mom in Germany. I was hoping it would be more about specifically US propaganda, but I mean, as a whole, it's not bad. Now, we've been looking at the fallout from all the right-winging of Cenk and Anna Transphobian lately. And I was thinking we could continue on with that. We had been looking at this sort of discussion with Francesca Fiorentini and Cenk, but there's other stuff as well that I was kind of curious on that. Let's see, what else? I mean, David Pac-Man's even like rounding up on him. Cenk and I are going to have to talk. But okay, why? Okay, this is Van Jones Planet. How the Young Turks pushed a right-wing propaganda story. And a transphobian. Trump gets delusional about new friends. Okay, this is Kyle Kulinski on the whole thing from Secular Talk.
It gets squirrely when you say that, like...
Okay, so I'm very curious about this. This should be interesting. I'm not really familiar. I've heard the name Kyle Kulinski a million times. Not really familiar with him, but this should be interesting.
PBD's an honest actor, or Tim Pool's an honest actor. You can have a conversation with them, but you can't have a conversation with Sam Cedar, right?
Wait.
If you're willing to have a conversation with, again, Glenn Beck, Tim Pool, if you're willing to go on their shows just to be able to shit on the left the entire time and say that, oh, well, these are the respectable areas where people are open to having discourse.
Yeah, okay.
And Sam Cedar is openly saying to you, he's like, I will come on your show anytime you want. If you don't want to platform me, you can come on my show anytime you want, and we can just discuss the issues anytime. We'll be friendly, and like,
he's got a great broadcasting voice.
No, the answer is no, because that's not what he's interested in. Kevin Kulinski breaks the sentence on TYT to have something a little more pleasant than talking about mass violence and extremist communities online.
Okay, let's see. Oh, actually, this is... Let me see. I'm going to find the original here. Kyle Kulinski breaks his silence. Find the It gets a bit meta if I'm reacting to Lance from the Surfs reacting. Yeah, that's what I've heard, that he's sort of like a left-leaning liberal sort.
On the subject of independent media, I'm dying to know your thoughts on TYT and Kasparian. So I'm not going to put you in a place where you have to attack them, but from my perspective, I feel like it's sad to see this because we've all been in this space for a while, and we've seen...
Yeah, anyone know who this guy on the left is? I'm not familiar with him.
We've seen this 100 times. Dave Rubin, Jimmy Dore, what's his name?
Jimmy Dore worked with TYT too, didn't he?
Russell Brand.
Oh God, Russell Brand. It's still wild to me that people ever thought he was on the left. Like, because you can go back a decade and find him hobnobbing with Nazis back in Britain and sexually harassing women and all the stuff that eventually led people to say, oh, wait a second, he's a dodgy bastard. He was doing all of that stuff. He was well known in Britain. I was there, I was in Britain at the time where, the media were trying to make him into some great progressive hope or something like that. And so, I mean, I saw all this shit. at the time, how he was hanging out with Fash, how he had this long trail of sexual harassment, how he started his career as a fucking puke-up artist, and all this stuff, and everyone's like pretending that there was nothing going on.
Where little by little you start to, you pick one or two issues, and then you start buddying up with the right. And I see this with TYT and Anna Kasparian, and I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Before I answer that, I'm curious your thoughts on, do you think it's going to go fully in that direction? Like, do you think it's genuinely going to end up like a Jimmy Dore or a Dave Rubin?
Between Jimmy Dore and Dave Rubin, I would tend to think more Dave Rubin than Jimmy Dore. Because Jimmy Dore is, like, way off the deep end. I mean, that's not just right-wing, it's just sort of wild bullshit. Like, on a whole different level. Like, Tim Pool level bullshit. Sometimes even wilder than fucking Tim Pool. But I think they've moved, actually, when you look at the full trajectory, they've been moving in this direction for a while.
Yes, I do. If you asked me this a year ago, I would say probably not. I was in that position where you were in, probably, with like Joe Rogan, where it's like, no, I think that you should try to reach these people. I think that maybe there's just a genuine agreement.
Oh, that's who that is. I saw a book by Mike Figueredo on the bookshelf. I thought he really liked the book. Okay, so I've not heard of him. I'm familiar with Leftist Mafia because the Glance from the Surfs goes on there a lot.
But to me, with time, it's become apparent that like both Cenk and Anna, they just don't want to listen to good faith criticism, and
Well, they don't want to listen to criticism from the left, but they never really have. Cenk has always, I mean, going back as long as he's had that fucking platform, used like ableist slurs against anyone who comes at him from the left and says that he's like too right-wing. And this is a thing in the media generally, in like dominant media. They love to be attacked from the right because it makes them look good. It makes them look better because when they're attacked from the right, they're being attacked for being too critical, too skeptical, too progressive and stuff. But they don't want to be attacked from the left because then they just look like assholes.
We all kind of like talked about this in different ways, like on Leftist Mafia, for example. And what really struck me is how, they just disregarded the arguments that we made. It was not in bad faith, even though they don't want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
It wasn't in bad faith, but they
I mean, I don't know what arguments these two made, but I mean, what I've seen of their responses to the very mild pushback they got at first, I mean, it was dishonest as hell. And what we saw on the stream when we were watching Cenk and Francesca Fiorentini, I mean, he was seriously dishonest there too. He was just completely full of shit.
And for me, I think that moment that really like clicked with me, like, no, it's over, was when they went after Emma Vigeland, because Emma Vigeland, they know her more than they know us. I was part of TYT Network, you were part of TYT Network, but we didn't
Jesus, is everybody part of TYT Network? Am I part of TYT Network and I don't know it? Like, is TYT Network just everywhere? Is TYT Network in the room with me right now? It's like everybody's part of fucking TYT Network.
Close relationship. I never was at TYT studio. I think you were only there a couple of times. So, like, there was that degree of separation between us. But just to see them disregard the criticisms of the left. I mean, we all criticize each other. You and I have had debates, like, in DMs on Twitter about fucking specific healthcare bills and shit like that. But we never, I never thought, oh, Kyle's a fucking grifter. And I don't think you thought the same about me. It was just disagreements that we were hashing out.
And I don't know either of them well enough to have an opinion. I mean, like, Lance, I can take or leave a bit. I think he's quite good on some things. I enjoy his collabs with Thought Slime where they watch, like, Tim Pool and make fun of him are some of my, like, regular viewing when I haven't got anything else to watch. Yeah, I mean, the TYT universe is like a fucking multiverse or something. And I like those. but I think that he tends to be a bit more of a lib than I personally am comfortable with. But I think, you know, when he and Thought Slime are getting together and making fun of Tim Pool and shit, I mean, that's usually classic television.
And even, like, I said something about Wolfpack on my show, and Jen had reached out to me privately and said, hey, the people at Wolfpack think that you got this wrong. And so, like, oh, shit, I don't remember what it was in particular, but I brought on one of the directors of Wolfpack on my...
Wolfpack? Not familiar with. American non-partisan... Okay. Let me just show you what I'm looking at here. They are calling for a campaign finance reform amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
My show to correct the record and talk about Wolfpack. And it's like, it's one of those things where we're all going to eat shit. You know, we're human beings. We don't have massive, you know, production crews. We kind of just get on camera and we say what we think. And so there are going to be times where we trip on our own dicks. So we have to eat shit.
How big are your dicks? Is that why they're only showing themselves from, like, the navel up? Are they just nothing but dick under there?
Sometimes, and our peers are the best people to hold us accountable. Like
Dick Weebles.
YouTube comment says, hey Mike, fuck you, you said this, you're a terrible person, I'm going to disregard that. But if Kyle reaches out to me and says, hey Mike, I think that you really messed up here, that's when I'm going to think, oh, okay, well, Kyle's saying this, he's been doing this for a long time, I respect him, he respects me. So that to me is why I think TYT might actually be straight up on gun. Because they tuned out all of the people that were closest to them, that respected them.
This is interesting, actually, specifically because these guys are both part of the massive and apparently ever-expanding TYT network. And I mean, what he's describing here is that that Jenk and Anatransphobian are treating these guys who were in their sort of circle the way Jenk and Anatransphobian have always treated people to their left, which does sound like a political reorientation.
They respect it, and now it's just right-wingers, Glenn Beck, PBD, and it's not a bad thing to go on these shows.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. I mean, I don't see any reason why debating these assholes is worthwhile. I mean, unless you've got receipts that are going to completely kill their careers, and it's live and there's no way they can stop you saying it, I don't see any reason that you should go on. Okay, I mean, I wasn't saying it as a criticism. In this particular case, the fact that these are people who could previously have expected Jenk to listen to them respectfully on something makes this more interesting. Precisely because they're sitting here as people who are definitely not, like, radical left. From what I'm hearing anyway. Hey, Badger. But yeah.
You know, going on Temple and whatnot, but it's what you do when you're on these shows, right? Like, you were on PBD, and you criticized them, you challenged them.
Yeah, the whole thing was a debate. Yeah, the whole thing was a debate.
The entire fucking thing was a debate, and this was the same criticism that we had with Jimmy Dore when he said,
Kyle's making me dizzy here. I mean, it's like he's on a little rocking boat horse or something
I
there.
don't care that you go on Tucker Carlson. I'm not trying to, like, police where you go. You're a grown man. But if I were on Tucker Carlson, I'm going to speak truth to power. I'm going to criticize him for the white supremacy that he's espousing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just don't see, like, there's an argument to be made for somebody who hasn't really got any platform. If the only platform they're getting is this, and it gets them seen, and they have something important that needs to be seen, you know, I don't know. There are cases where I'd be like, yeah, I guess, but really, I think the only way, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the only really legitimate reason to actually share a platform with any of those assholes is with the intention of utterly sinking them, of just humiliating them in front of the world and in front of their own audiences.
I don't see that. I see them going on these shows, attacking the left, and to me it's like, okay, you know what? maybe 5 years ago, I would still be more charitable. A year ago, I'd be more charitable. But I feel like we've seen this show so many times. It's a rerun.
I mean, so we were just watching this thing about like media literacy skills, like teaching your kids media literacy skills. It turned out, I thought it's going to be something a little bit different than what it turned out to be. And it's still, I mean, not bad advice. And they were like, look for patterns. And when it comes to the moving to the right, that is such a well-rehearsed pattern. It is so choreographed. It works the same way every fucking time. I mean, it's like there's a playbook. There's a literal playbook that just changes hands, and it's like, okay, say some reactionary bullshit that you know is going to piss off everyone who has ever cared about you. Wait until somebody gets angry, make sure that you get people really angry. If you don't manage to get people really angry, try again until you do. Use the fact that your deliberate provocation pissed off a few people, eventually, to prove that the left just isn't welcoming of discussion and debate and stuff like that. And you just can't work with them. And then you go on, like a Fash show. You go on, like, Pim Tool. You go on fucking Weed Lord or fucking, Ben Shapiro or whatever. And you say, see, when I said all that stuff on Twitter, all the leftists, they said that it was literally a neo-Nazi talking point that had no truth to it. And that hurt my feelings, but when I say it here, you give me a respectful hearing. The right is so welcoming. The left are just nasty people. I mean, it is so fucking... It's such a well-rehearsed pattern.
They're less subtle. Like, I think Anna is less subtle than Dave Rubin's script at this time.
It's almost like they had kind of the opposite reaction as me. So, like, in 2016, it looked to me like they were fully in resistance mode, where it was like, man, we're gonna fight tooth and nail on everything.
Yeah, I mean, and what's wild is Trump did not do well in this election. Like, the only reason he won is somebody had to. He actually had, like, the slimmest margin of any winner in generations. This was not him winning, this was just nobody liked Kamala Harris. So to act like this is proof that, those radical leftists at TYT are just out of touch with mainstream America, or some shit like that, it's just nonsense.
Fuck Trump in every imaginable way. To the point where, there were some areas where I disagreed with them on, like, Russiagate type stuff. I was like, I don't agree with these particular criticisms that they're making, but it seemed like they were in full-on resistance mode. And
okay, I appreciate anyone who's a little bit skeptical about the full-on Russiagate narrative, because that is a thing where it is very easy. Like, there's so much stuff that is just nonsense in there, and most people don't pay attention to it enough to actually see the sheer amount of bullshit that gets stuck in there alongside things that actually, that there is a little bit of truth to, but not necessarily in the way that they're being presented.
Contain that all the way up, seemingly until recently, and then the mindset. So in the same way as, like, I was...
Kerry's margin of victory was slim, but what was distinctive there is that despite him winning Ohio, they manipulated the election in a pretty brazen way, and so Bush actually... Bush claimed it even though he lost.
Was trying to, like, find bridges or areas.
There's a great book on just how fucked up, just how much just really brazen manipulations went on in Ohio with the vote count, called What Happened in Ohio. It's witness testimony, statistical analysis, all the fucked up shit that went on that led to this situation where what they essentially did was, rather than, like, flipping a precinct that went for Kerry to Bush or something like that, they just minimized Kerry's margin in Ohio and exaggerated Bush's, and they came up with all sorts of wild bullshit excuses for why there shouldn't be independent observers in the Board of Election when it was going on, so that they could just count it in private with no scrutiny.
From 2016 on.
If anything, it was dodgier than Florida 2000.
Actually, I realized, shit, this didn't work. And I flipped, and now I'm being super aggressive, and I'm the one that's resisting. And for them, it was resist, resist, resist. And then just recently, it's almost like they just got tired of doing the we're in the resistance, we're going to fight everything. And now you hear Cenk's big thing is like, we got to unite the populist right and the populist left, and here's this area and that area where we can agree. But what I would say to Cenk in reaction to that is, it's not like...
Here, let me see if I can find a link to this book. What Happened in Ohio. I believe there may even be a free version of it. Here we go. Gonna drop the link in chat for anyone who wants to read it. Actually, a friend of mine was a human rights observer in central Ohio during the election, and has an affidavit in there about watching a Diebold employee. Major Republican donors also supplied the voting machines for a lot of Ohio. Now, their successor in interest is called Dominion. But an employee from Diebold had unauthorized and unsupervised access to the Board of Elections server room, and nobody did anything, and nobody never explained what he was doing in there. Nobody called him on it. Nobody checked.
Completely and utterly full of shit. Every single one of them. That's even the and God bless Bernie. I love him. I don't think Bernie's a sellout by any stretch of the imagination. But his strategy on this has been like, I agree with Trump that we should cap credit card interest rates at 10%, and I agree with Elon Musk and knows that we need to cut the Pentagon, and he's putting that out there.
Oh yeah, and it's such bullshit.
But here's the thing, Bernie. They're not going to cap credit card interest rates at 10%.
And the thing about Bernie Sanders is he was doing this way before. Like, fucking, you all remember Lou Dobbs, chat? Far-right, anti-immigrant asshole was a commentator on CNN for a while. Maybe he still is. It's been a long time since I watched fucking CNN. But he actually said that Bernie Sanders was the only Democrat who talked any sense on immigration. And that's not a compliment.
They're not going to cut the Pentagon. And then when they don't do those things, all of those MAGA accounts are going to pretend like they never supported capping credit card interest rates at 10%. They're going to say they never supported cutting the Pentagon, and they're going to go...
Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of the things that, like, Biden's campaign sort of threw out there, they said they were going to do, just to sound progressive and, like, sound like they were in touch with, like, fucking most people.
Wherever Trump wants them to go. Because MAGA is effectively a cult. And so what I would say to Bernie is...
Yeah, and the one thing that unites them other than Trump is they're fucking racist.
I know where your heart is. I know you're trying to do what you think is the right thing and get them in a gotcha and hypocrisy burn them and say, see...
Yeah, and no, I don't even know if that's it.
They were lying, etc., but they're immune to the hypocrisy burns. And so the real strategy is to upfront say, look, these people are full of shit.
Yeah, except the thing is, the Democrats aren't going to do that. See, they realized... I mean, like last time, they, for all their talk about being the resistance, they did not actually do... They voted with Trump on all sorts of the worst things that he proposed. They voted to give him all sorts of, like, new weapons and surveillance powers and all sorts of fucked up shit. And they're going to do that again. And it looks like they're going to do that. I mean, they've already voted with to screw trans people.
They're full of shit. They don't mean a goddamn word of what they say. And I would put in the same category, I put, the PBDs of the world and the Tim Pools of the world and the Joe Rogans of the world. Like,
yeah, I mean...
Rogan, like, when Trump starts doing horrible shit, do you think Rogan is going to be on his show like, man, I really disagree with this? Like,
no, he isn't. Of course he's not.
Back in the day, remember when the child separation policy was happening?
What do you mean back in the day? That never stopped. And there's this law, what's it called? This immigration law, Lakin something act. Forget the name. Lakin Riley Act. And that thing is hideous. Because what it does is that it says that if a non-citizen is even accused of petty crime, not like a felony, not like serious crime, like the example provided is fucking shoplifting, okay? That immediately requires them to be sent off to the camps for who knows how long, maybe forever. It is a fucking Nazi law. And the Democrats are cool with it, and Joe Biden supports it.
Hogan had on Duncan Trussell, and he went on like a pro-immigrant rant where he was saying, yeah, and do you think that's going to happen this time around?
Fuck no.
He endorsed the guy who said he wants to do a mass deportation, and if Trump does do a mass deportation, Rogan's either going to say nothing about it or just defend it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the point, is like,
and so will the Young Turfs.
More allies who are liberals, or who are just independents, than there are the populist right. I'm of the belief at the
well, yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. Yeah, he's absolutely not wrong there. I mean, statistically, the number of people who vote for Republican in the U.S., you can find this in polls all the time, they are a very small minority. It's nowhere near the number of people who vote for Democrats or don't vote. And the people who don't vote, by and large, when they do vote, because they sometimes do, they vote for Democrats. Like, the reason Republicans are so big on vote suppression shit, on these voter ID laws and all this other bullshit, is because they know they're in the minority. They know the only way they win things is if they can prevent people voting.
At this point, the populist right is fake. It's not real. They
Yeah.
went on a line to go where
It's a pile of money with a mouth.
them to go. And by the way, I know I'm right about this because again, we have the first 4 years. I mean,
Yeah, and we have polls, and we have lots of polls.
already Trump has axed Lena Khan. Lena Khan was like the example of,
And it's worth noting Kamala Harris also axed her.
oh, if they mean this and they're actually going to be populist, they will keep Lena Khan at the FTC.
And this is precisely why the term populist is meaningless and you should stop using it.
And they said, oh, J.D. Vance had said some kind words about Lena Khan. Maybe Trump will keep Lena Khan. And then we learned just last week, he's not keeping her. He's replacing Lena Khan with somebody who says, I want to stop the FTC's war on big business. So how...
Yeah, which is, it's worth noting, more or less what the Harris campaign was doing as well. They were not going to keep Khan either.
How many times do they have to fail this test before we call it for what it is? Jake Vance pretends like he's a populist. He's not even in favor of raising the minimum wage.
Well, of course not, because the thing about the term populist is it's meaningless. The only reason that it is used is to whitewash fascists and to tar leftists by association with them. That's the whole reason. It is not a coherent thing. And when you act like populist is the defining characteristic, like anyone seriously means that and uses it as a term of self-identification, you're of course you're going to be surprised by every single fucking thing they do, because it does not give you any coherent account of where they stand.
He dodged a question on that during the campaign. He's not even in favor of the PRO Act. He said he supports the $6,000 child tax credit, and he didn't show up for the vote on the $6,000 child tax credit.
Yeah, because they don't give a fuck.
Right? So, it's just, I'm hoping, like I think a lot of people are, for just, when something really bad happens, I'm hoping that there's some sort of an about face.
No, wait, why? Like, when in our lifetimes, and I think mine is possibly a little bit longer than his, has something really bad happening led to an actual about face? I haven't seen it. Like, recently, even. Like fucking COVID. There's something really bad happening. And the U.S. policy of not taking it seriously led to something really, really bad happening. And there's been no about face. There's not even been an acknowledgement. In fact, what they did was they stopped counting the people who were getting sick and dying. And they made it harder to figure out how much of it is going around and told people it's good for your immune system to get sick, which is literally the opposite of the truth because it damages your immune system. Hey, imperialism bat. You know, I was thinking about this because you occasionally when you watch like leaders, foreign politicians, foreign leaders and stuff like that, you will see these moments and it's like that you've never seen this before. Like, I mean, just to give one example, when I remember actually it was Nasrallah of Hezbollah was asked at in an interview after, I think it was the 2006 Israeli invasion of Lebanon and the massacre of Dahia and everything. He said, you know, if you knew that this was going to be the response, would you have proceeded the exact same way? And he said, absolutely not. I had not expected that they were going to be this vicious. If I had, I would never have done that. And he said he said he was actually sorry. He apologized to people and said obviously he got this one wrong and he wouldn't have done it that way again. Oh yeah. One thing though, that is an ableist slur that kind of insults people with mental disabilities. I'm not particularly a fan of it. And you may not be, I know you're not a native English speaker. In English-speaking places, the only people who use that are literal neo-Nazis. That is, so, that's a term, actually, if you hear people using it, you're probably around fascists. But, yeah. Well, I'm interested in them in this case because they're talking about how the young TERFs have decided to be sucking up to the far right. Another example of this is actually it was after the DPRK started having COVID cases. I mean, again, we're back to COVID. And they went on what they called maximum alert for 60 days over it, or until they started to, they had no more reported cases. And Kim Jong-un gave this big speech. And the bit that left my jaw dropping was he said he said he was actually ashamed that they couldn't do more. And it's like, I've seen politicians in this country do utterly shameful, disgraceful things and even unintentionally fuck up remarkably badly. And I've never heard an apology for anything really serious. Like, never once have I ever heard somebody say, oh, I'm really ashamed that I did something that got a huge number of people killed or something like that. It's like, no, we need to look forward to the future and stuff like that. Oh, we can't be constantly dwelling on the past. And it's like, we're not spoiled for politicians apologizing and taking responsibility in this country. Not internationally. I mean, internationally, they will openly say, yeah, we don't apologize for what the U.S. does, no matter how bad it is. I mean, but even domestically, even to the people whose votes they supposedly care about, they won't. They don't apologize. They don't take any fucking responsibility.
Right? Mm-hmm. And that TYT goes, hey, they didn't do the thing that I thought they might do, so now I'm on the warpath against them too. So I hope that that's the case.
I don't think so, because what they've specifically done is changed what they say that they want. They've gone from, in a space of a year, saying that, supporting trans rights and pointing out right-wing bullshit that was meant to attack trans people. It was totally dishonest. To actually doing that exact bullshit that they'd previously called out. And the fact that they're willing to just throw trans people under the bus, despite the fact that that is an unpopular position, not just with their audience, but with the population as a whole. That is very much a ruling class obsession, hurting trans people. That is a totally unforced position to take. That tells me that they are just doing Fash stuff.
Well, we'll just have to see if that's the case.
Yeah, how is the job?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to hold my breath on that because I am notoriously a horrible judge of character on these things, as we already just went through. Like we just discussed the Rogan thing. I gave him credit for way too long.
Yeah, okay, I didn't know anything about this, but that doesn't surprise me.
For Jimmy Dore, I gave him credit for way too long. For all these people, but what I would say is this: I really hope that that Jank or Anna or both.
I have not actually followed. I've heard their names. Well, the guy on the left, I only heard his name just now. Kyle Kulinski is a name I've heard on and off, but I've never really paid any attention to him, so I do not know backstory going back that far. Literally, the only reason I'm interested in this is because I'm interested in their take on the Jenk thing, because they are amongst the 30 billion influencers who are somehow connected to TYT.
They talk to Sam Cedar or they talk
I would love that.
John Iadarola and Francesca Fiorentini, because it really does. They seem to think, as you sort of pointed out, that anybody who disagrees with them on certain issues, it truly is just a grifter and they're a liar. And
well, I mean, that's one thing, but the thing is, what they've always done, what TYT, what Jeng in particular, have always done is anyone who disagrees with them from the left, they're unserious. They're they make some sort of cast aspersions on their mental health and stuff like that. No serious discussion, no debate, just dismissal and insults. They hate it when people criticize them from the left. And what these two guys are not getting entirely, maybe they're going to yet, is that the reaction, the dismissal that they got for criticizing all this far-right shit that TYT are now doing is exactly the sort of response that critics of TYT from the left have always gotten from them.
And, whether it's crime issues or trans issues, they seem to think everybody who's on the left genuinely loves crime, right? I've heard this is something.
Well, yeah, because crime, I mean, as usual in the U.S., when you talk about crime in the U.S., it's always meant as a racist dog whistle.
For them. So it's I want them to talk to somebody who can rep that counter argument, who they respect enough.
That's the thing. The people who will bring that counter argument, by definition, are not people they respect.
To give them the space to make the argument, right? And I don't know if they'll do.
They have their own platform. They don't need more space to make the fucking argument. They're making the argument. And they are responding completely dishonestly to anyone who points out that they're full of shit.
I'd be willing to have the conversation with them.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I would have no problem having that conversation with them. But
I mean, it would be wild if they decide to try to call him a fucking loony lefty or something like that, as they do with actual leftists who criticize them.
The bridge is burnt for a lot of folks. It's burnt between myself and them. But I mean, at least they can speak to Francesca or John.
We've been watching them speak to Francesca.
Or you. Because if you think that we're bad faith, that's fine. Because I've taken the gloves off. I'm kind of past the whole maybe we can save them. I can fix them. I don't believe that. But for the people who
this is the gloves off. This does not feel like gloves off. This feels like the gloves are actually being extra padded.
Still on good terms with them. I think that the fact that he's not having that conversation, and Francesca actually just said, I was watching The Vanguard, and they were playing a clip of Francesca where she tried to have a conversation between them and John, and Jang denied it. So the fact that they're not doing that is so frustrating to me.
But it's this idea. Oh, this is what Jang's been going around saying now. When we disagree, let's disagree, and then let's go have a beer after, and then where we agree, let's unite. This is his big thing that he's going around saying now.
Yeah, to Nazis.
And it's look, I understand that, but it gets squirrely when you say that PBD's an honest actor or Tim Pool's an honest.
Who the hell is PBD? Is that Patrick Bet-David? I've not. That's not a name that I'm at all familiar with.
Actor, you can have a conversation with them, but you can't have a conversation with Sam Cedar, right?
Right.
So,
that's what is.
I mean, that's
so,
Well, I mean, but the thing is, this actually is not new. This is literally always how they've been when somebody is criticizing them from their left. Nothing, that is not at all new.
And, you know, Cenk had Hassan, Cenk and Hassan did that thing on Thanksgiving, and...
Yeah, and of course, they're related.
I don't know, it just seemed like, it was sort of like hitting a brick wall a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, it seems like there's an impasse. And I think
Yeah, because fucking they're full of shit, and they know they're full of shit. They know, it's not that they don't know the criticisms. It's not that they don't know the arguments that can be made against their bullshit position. Because they've made all of those arguments themselves. They know perfectly well that what they're doing is not justifiable.
Is like, if all of your passion comes out and you get really like fiery and riled up, just when it's those little areas of disagreement with the left,
Like whether trans people should be allowed to exist, for example.
that's why a lot of people
Like whether Nazis are bad.
I like this because that sort of like fiery anger and passion where like you're really about it. In a moment like this, all of that anger.
I mean, one of the things that came up because they were talking about when we were watching Francesca Fiorentini with him, and she was talking about this time he went on shared a platform with a white nationalist prick called Charlie Kirk of Toilet Paper USA. I mean, Turning Point USA for your bunghole, and he completely shot the bed. I mean, he was just sucking up to Charlie Kirk left and right. Well, mostly right. And, you know, he was handed such an easy question. Well, like, why do you think it is that the right has so much more reach? Or something like that. And there's an obvious answer. The right has huge amounts of money being poured on it for even the most talentless asshole. As long as they can hold a microphone and say slurs into it, they can get a contract worth 6 figures. And Francesca was like, well, like, that's the obvious thing to say. And instead, Cenk said this whole thing about, well, the right is so welcoming.
Really should be targeted at the right, Trump just won the White House. They got the Senate, they got the House. This whole Doge thing is just literal billionaire robber barons who are going to loot the treasury and, you know, cut your grandma's Social Security and Medicare. And it's like, we really do need to be harping away on this and going after these people because it's about to get really ugly really, really quickly.
Yeah, and Cenk has decided that he wants to, that the money is on the side of the ugliness.
And we really need both, basically anybody who's anywhere left of center to unite and all be in unison and all hammer away. This was the brilliance of Fox News and the right-wing media sphere. Is like, so they'll have their stories for the day or the week and their talking points, and like every outlet under the sun will repeat it till the cows come home. And
yes, because that's how they get paid. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's money all the way down. Like, they're getting paid by the same people, so no matter how ridiculous the talking points are, no matter how completely they contradict with the position they were taking 24 hours ago, they will do it, and they will all do it, and they'll all do it at the exact same time. Like fucking, like the Glockenspiel on Marienplatz in Munich. It's the only thing I can think of as an example, and it's probably not very useful, because you've probably not been there, but they have like all these little puppets, and it's all very mechanical and intricate and totally choreographed, and like tourists love to watch it because it is quite amazing. But you know, nobody would be under the impression that those like little puppet figures in the clock actually are doing this out of their own accord.
And they drive the narrative. They drive the entire political narrative in the country, and that's what the left is missing. That's what liberals and leftists are missing, is just in unison a media apparatus. That's all.
Yeah, and the thing, but that's because that's the money. Like, if you if there was like a leftist media apparatus that was funded in the way that the right-wing media sphere is, and was therefore able to get the kind of algorithmic boosting that the far right gets, and all that other stuff, then you would see, then things would be very different. But the thing is, there's a reason that isn't the case. There's a reason that there isn't a huge amount of billionaire money being thrown at revolutionary leftist fucking content creators, and it's because what we are calling for doesn't help rich people.
Away on the same things. And
rich people don't like it when you want to expropriate them.
Hearing the narrative.
Oh, that's very good timing, because it is time to wrap up. Held my own spit. Sorry about that. Thank you to everyone who has joined in. And let me just say, if you're enjoying the stream and you would like to support the stream, I would very much appreciate it, because at the moment, because the AI grift has killed my profession of translating, this is kind of like my main source of income at the moment, because I just can't. Yeah, it's a bad year. If you would like to support the stream, I would very much appreciate it. And if you can't afford to, or aren't inclined to, whatever, that's cool too, I understand, because things suck all around. Let me just give you the link to the Discord for anyone who hasn't already got it. Oh, fucking hell, Discord, why are you doing this to me? And here, hang on a second. Also, in case you missed it, I put out the sort of greatest hits of 2024 the other day. Just some of what I think are the most memorable moments, as a way of just thanking everybody who's been with me and endured the past year with me. And so I'll see you tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time.